In specialty healthcare, growth is not optional, but scaling with operational excellence, that's the hard part. I'm Joe Zboch. This is Scaling Specialty Growth. Welcome to another episode of Scaling Specialty Growth. I'm your host, Joe Zboch. Today's guest is Kelli Anderson. She's the COO at DMOS Orthopaedic Centers. DMOS is located in Des Moines, which you may have guessed. Claims 5 locations, 30 physicians, an additional 50 plus PAs, PTs, and hand therapists. Kelli herself is an operations leader with deep experience across both hospitals and independent practices. Throughout her career, she specialized in coding optimization, clinical documentation, rev cycle, and now, of course, she's running the whole show at DMOS. She's been there, she's doing that, and I couldn't be more excited to have her on the show. Kelli, welcome.
Thanks, Joe. I'm super excited to be here. And as we talked about earlier, this is my first podcast, so I'm ready to get into it.
Well, thank you so much for, jumping on the show for the first time ever. I'm really excited. We like to get started really quickly and jump in right to the first question. So, Kelli, how do you think about hitting organizational growth goals while maintaining operational excellence? What's your approach?
Yeah, we have to, you have to keep the wheels on the bus running as you what's going to be the bigger picture in the organization. So, understanding where you've been, understand where you want to go. What does it look like? What's that end result? And then lots of communication. You got to get all the proper parties involved, understanding, make sure everyone's reaching towards the same goal. And then, you push for it. You're going to have some, you're going to do good things and you're going to have some back steps and things that don't work out the way you want to, but really it's just getting everyone to buy into and keeping them informed as to what that organizational growth goal is. And then making sure that it represents that growth. Everything's always a step forward with orthopedics. There's new technology coming out. There's so many talented orthopedic groups in this, across the country, and they're doing fantastic things. And a lot of times it's just getting everyone to buy into what those growth goals are, and then keeping the staff that are in those locations maintaining just the regular operations. You can't take your eye off the ball. So you got to make sure everything's going.
Getting buy-in, what does that look like? Because I know, especially when you're inside of an independent practice, right? The physician ownership, I'm sure there's a lot of things coming in, not just from that side of the house, but also other talented folks on the team, Rich, Chris, others. So is it your job to be like the filter? And like, do you kind of have to be the person that's like, hey, that's a great idea. Here's what it would actually look like. I guess that goes into the keeping the wheels on the bus go round and round. Sorry, I had to say it.
No worries. Everything comes down to the details. It really does. Like I'll say a lot of times in the organization, that's a great idea, but now we got to get into the details of how we're actually going to make it happen, because that's the next step. So like Rich and all the great leadership that I work here at DMOS, the physician leaders, fantastic ideas, definitely on the cutting edge of everything. And then we have to operationalize it. We have to get into the nuts and the bolts of who's going to do what steps do we have to take to reach those goals. So you're correct. I do get into the nitty gritty, say that's a great idea. Now let's get into the details to figure out how it's actually going to roll out and work.
Do you feel that there's like a healthy tension between growth and what it takes to actually do it? Or do you find that you're the one saying, hey, let's go, because you have almost like the keys to the systems, like you're very familiar with where you've been, where you want to go. And so do you feel like well positioned? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, super well positioned. I would say my role is more of the keeping the temperature of how everything is running in the organization, the staff, what are their challenges, what are their pressures, and then taking the new ideas, the new operational growth goals, and then being able to segment it for a streamlined rollout, keeping the staff informed of what's happening, but understanding sort of what does a rollout need to look like, what's too fast, what's too slow, what's doable, what's not doable.
Yeah. Do you have any like formal systems in place to bubble up the best ideas from the team? And what does that look like when are you like literally looking at a screen of, an air traffic control of how things are going?
Yeah, we definitely keep, we have a executive leadership team that looks at that sort of overall goal. But DMOS does really great things. Like we do quarterly focus group meetings with our employees, and each focus group has a different topic. So, for instance, today is one of our quarterly focus group meetings, and the topic is communication. We ask our employees that attend those, any employee can, and then they get a list of questions beforehand. And then they are with our board president and our CEO, and then just them. And then that is that open forum to tell us, how are we doing? Where do we need to do better as an organization? What ideas do you guys have that you've seen and would like DMOS to maybe look into and see if it's a possibility?
No pressure, but is there anything that, the staff have brought up recently in one of these that you're like, hey, that's a really great idea. We're going to make a organizational change to implement that?
Yeah, I think I would use kind of our marketing as an example. Social media is social media is just essential these days. And they wanted to see us out there a little bit more, more posts, and they wanted to see the physicians post a little more. Our physicians do so many great things outside of DMOS. It's not just coming in and seeing patients all day and doing surgery. They're active in their communities, they're active with local schools. And so one of the reminders that they give us is we want to see what the doctors are doing. They're doing so many great things. So that's something that came from our employees.
I love that. Yeah, so a couple things that I'm already taking away is one of the ways that this communication and ability to bring in ideas and filter them and vet them is literally a quarterly focus group, creating an actual forum for this type of work to happen. That's fantastic. And of course, knowing where you are, where you're going to go. Can you share an example of a project, a recent project where you had to really apply all of your skills, all of these kind of frameworks you've been talking about? Maybe it didn't go well at certain points, but getting it over the line, some sort of large operational project.
Yeah, one of our organizational growth goals is in our work comp area to be able to grow that business. So we had to sit down and say, okay, we know the goal. We know we want to grow the organization, work comp. You have to get the stakeholders involved. You have to have conversations with the physicians and APPs that are doing the work, understand what the vision is. And then you got to put structural steps in place. So we looked at how is the service we're providing? Are there any gaps? We identified we had some technology gaps, so we're currently working through the process of adding a portal to our organization to be able to provide the consumer, our referral base, with a consistent platform for communication. We're super excited about that. We're kind of almost on the tail end of that going live. We've worked through just staffing needs and different things. So that was where it went from idea generation to reviewing what it was needed, education of the staff, getting everybody on board, and then actually putting the actual details in place of adding that portal, finding a technology partner to partner with, and then implementing that. And now we're sort of waiting, go almost live now, and then start to get feedback from our referral sources.
Nice. I want to dig into this. There's quite a few things that you've covered over the span of this. I guess the first one is, how did you being DMOS, decide that workers' comp was one of the things to go after? It's like, hey, this is a growth area for us, and we're not going to just flip a switch and it's going to be rainbows and unicorns. Like, we'll have to put in the work.
Right.
What was the process that you guys went through to decide that this is the thing that we're going to invest in across people, process, technology?
I'm going to go back to, there's so many talented orthopedic groups across the country that are independently owned like ourselves. So we actually belong to an organization that is made up of several independently owned orthopedic groups across the United States. We meet as groups and we go, and a lot of it is idea generation, and you hear what other groups are doing and you're like, how did you do that? And it's such a great community to be a part of. And part of that was you get to see what other people are doing. So work comp came up and we were like, wow, it was something that was always there. We wanted to do better in it, but you kind of have to talk with other groups and how are they being successful. And so that's kind of where work comp got usually at started talking to vendors during that time and started to understand the possibilities of that expansion. So We also feel it's just a great service to our community, workers' comp, injuries, and connecting with that community and the needs. And a lot of people, a lot of the are orthopedic injuries. So we wanted to play a bigger part in serving our community.
What, just for folks listening, that organization of independently owned, are you speaking about Orthoform, or there's local in the Des Moines area as well that are maybe tailored to workers' comp, or
Yeah.
thinking like business organizations, just so folks can know, like, in their area, something to Google or look for?
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely Orthoforum. That's kind of we've been a part of that for several years now. There are, local groups in the surrounding states as part of it. And then you kind of connect. There's groups within Iowa that are part of Orthoforum, and you kind of connect and you find each other, and generate, you do idea generation, and you get to have success in their successes and really help one another thrive in the orthopedic realm.
Nice. Dig into the assessment of the current state. You mentioned earlier that understanding where you are is key to knowing, like, how you're going to get to
Where you
where
want to
you
go?
want to go. So what did that assessment of the current state of workers' comp look like? I know you guys, I mean, I think of workers' comp as almost like it's a competitive referral. It's not a bygone conclusion that it's going to go to you. So tell me about that assessment of the opportunity there.
Yeah, work comp in Iowa is service. It's a service industry. And when we looked at a little bit of history, what has been the path of work comp for DMOS? And what do we want it to be in the organization? We want to serve our community, as we talked about earlier. So first of all, you get feedback, and that feedback lets you know sort of, hey, we're not doing such a good job in that realm, or we are doing really good at that. How can we do more? And then it's all about timing. It's about communication. It's about moving that injured worker to the next phase in a timely and effective manner. And so we took a step back and we just said, are we doing that? How are we doing that? And maybe what are our roadblocks to being better at doing that? Then it sort of formulated, what are you doing well? What aren't you doing well? If you aren't doing something well, what was that? And what are things that we can do internally? Is that process? Is that staffing? Is that technology? And then the plan kind of formulates from there. After a couple times you look at it and then relook at it, and then you start to investigate what's out there. And then the plan kind of forms from there as to how we're going to grow and reach that organizational growth goal.
Yeah. So you came to this idea that technology was going to be a key part of the process. Earlier, you said tech gaps. What were some of those tech gaps that you wanted to fill that are going to, help? Is it make the workers' comp process more efficient? Is it about driving more volume? Obviously, there's nurse case managers and the adjusters and that relationship as well. So there's almost like this B2B aspect to it that you don't see with, a typical, either self-directed referral or traditionally a provider-based referral.
Yeah. The whole thing at work comp is, the injured worker gets seen and evaluated, and then everybody's like, what's next? So that's where the communication, we wanted to find a tool that could help more instantaneous communication, get updates to the case managers or adjusters and employers. And right now we were relying on some, the old school way, a telephone call, an email. We wanted to be able to get them instantaneous access. So we looked for a technology application such as a portal where we would able to be uploading documents. We could do some messaging. We would be able to keep them informed of new services that DMOS was offering, and kind of put it in their hands to be able to go in and give us and exchange information that needs to happen. Besides just the name and all the basics things, then you have just getting them the tools, because there's always someone in a workers' compensation case, there's always someone waiting to say, what's next? What is the next step with this injured worker? What can we do? What can't we do? And definitely the technology portal that we're working towards will help us with that in the future.
You mentioned earlier, like, things don't always go your way. When you're working on a project, whether opening a new clinic, rolling out, a new experience and accompanying technology, there are going to be things that don't go your way, that don't maybe fit expectations or need hands-on, right, nitty-gritty type work. When those things come up, What's your thought process? Or do you like enter fix it mode? Do you like over communicate? Do you stop everything and pause? What's your approach there when things don't go well at a point in a project?
Yeah, for me, it's a fix it mode. You just get in there and be like, okay, it's not working. How do you do that? And sometimes it's needed to just get in there, make those decisions, and then move forward based upon time sensitivity. Other things, in other examples that don't go your way, you can not as urgent. You can kind of take a step back to say, and just reevaluate, okay, that didn't work, or that didn't work out the way we thought it was going to. Do we still feel we're heading in the right direction? Do we still feel that this is the direction? And if so, then we power forward. We just take the bumps in the road as we go and keep going down the track towards the goal. Or sometimes, things always happen for a reason. Sometimes you take a step back to be like, this gave us an opportunity we didn't see earlier. And maybe we're going to take this. Maybe this is a way to show us this. There's another way. There's a better way that we're going to like the end result better.
As you went through that, something came to me where it's just a mini version of the framework you discussed earlier, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, hey, let's assess, let's get feedback, let's see what's going on. And so it's this loop where you just continually cycle and learn and move up. Let's talk a little bit about, I want to get into what you're working on this year, what's on the radar, some of that fun future looking stuff, the
Yeah.
growth goals and things that are really exciting. But first, when it comes to just the KPI side of things, it's really important. How do you think about that? Are there KPIs for each phase of the project that you're marching towards, or how do you think about and how do you implement KPIs at DMOS?
Yeah, a lot of the projects that we do, as you talked about what we're working on this year, like we have a new location opening in Norwalk, Iowa. We're super
Okay.
excited. It's going to be our sixth location. That's not really KPI driven organizational goal, but you're working with construction partners, you're working on timelines, and then that's sort of where lots of things can pop up in the construction process. Delay of equipment or changes in the soil, and hey, your original plan of how the parking lot was going to be laid is going to be a little bit different. I've learned a lot during that process. So that's an
Wow. Okay.
example. That's an example of there really isn't KPIs. You're trying to hit your dates on your goals of when things will be accomplished, and you're trying to hit that opening date. All the while behind the scenes, you're preparing for that opening. You're preparing for staffing, you're preparing for outfitting the building, and you're looking at start dates, and then you're looking at just all the different financial things that come with opening a building and all of that. And so that's where the KPIs start to come in, right? For such a new location, you start to look at revenues, and you start to look at patients coming in, our strategy for making sure it's a vibrant clinic right out of the bat. We get traffic through that clinic, all those sort of things. And then that's where the KPIs and the numbers start going in to be like, okay, now once it's open, are we hitting those KPIs of what we expected?
Well, when it comes to it being vibrant and getting a lot of traffic, props to the DMOS staff for saying, hey, let's get on our social media game. How did you decide that opening that location made a lot of sense for the community and from a financial perspective? What kind of data were you looking at? Where did it come from? What were those conversations initially?
Yeah, a lot of time organizations will look at heat maps based upon where the patient, like a zip code heat map, where the patient's coming from that come to our current locations that we have. We look at where is the Des Moines Metro growing. Where is new housing projects going up? Where are families, and where are those up and coming communities? And they're all over Des Moines. Des Moines is a great city, great to be a part of it. So there's so many great metro communities. Norwalk was chosen just for things like that, growth, what's coming up in that particular community,
Mm-hmm.
just sort of what types of patients are coming to us at other zip codes, and then a lot of times it's luck. You look at land and you look at other things like that. So sometimes the data kind of tells you where you need to go and expand.
Yep. And in the absence of that data, just find the nearest Starbucks, right? um,
Or
well, that's
yeah,
really exciting.
or where are all the sports happening right now? Where are their orthopedic needs?
Yes, of course, of course. Okay, so what's next? Obviously, the location is something that this year is launching. Do you have any other growth goals or projects that are coming down the pike that you're excited about?
Yeah, we talked about our growth and work comp. Super excited about that and the direction it's going. I think in the mind of every organization these days is AI. The AI technology is growing so quickly, just trying to keep up on. That's where the Ortho Forum comes in really great. What are other groups doing? You're not really trying to recreate the wheel. You could talk with groups, but there's lots of up and coming AI in healthcare. We use AI in our call center. We use AI in our urgent injury clinics right now. So we always have that. Where else can we incorporate the great technology that's coming out? And then just general expansion of services, looking at each of the service lines, each of the specialties, and sort of, where does growth need to continue to come from, other services that we can expand on. And then there's partnering to make the services we provide better.
Yeah. You mentioned kind of the magic word AI. One follow-up question there. I think it's said quite often, I've spent a lot of time, I've been in digital health for my entire career. And one of the things that I consistently hear from digital transformation access operations leader is solutions without problems. Mm-hmm. Like absolute no-go, can't happen. So when it comes to AI, huge amount of buzz, but there's real applications. How do you think about AI in terms of operationally, results it can actually deliver? And what are the metrics there? Is it efficiency? Is it experience? Is it a combination?
Yeah, I mean, you look at something that will enhance the services that you're able to provide or fill a need that you're not able to fill. So like in a call center, or AI can answer so many calls that really helps the service level that we're able to provide to patients coming in, whether that be checking a location or confirming an appointment or a cancel and reschedule. AI is behind the scenes, and it's growing that it can look at those and answer those quickly, for the organization and for the patients that we're serving. Other than that, I think we try and find AI that just fits into what the product we want to produce. If it doesn't fit, we don't really force it. Sometimes we find ourselves sitting back and waiting, watching AI. How is a company developing it? Like, we might be interested, but it's maybe not at the point where we're ready to put it in. It's not going to serve the process we want it to serve. And then we watch them closely, and then we'll take a chance on some AI, and then other AI, we want to make sure that it's going to be a good fit into the product we want to be able to offer.
Yeah, I think the primary filter of, is it going to serve the process?
Correct.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Kelli, thank you so much for jumping on an episode of Scaling Specialty Growth. I really enjoyed the conversation. Where can people find you if they want to reach out and maybe ask you follow-up questions about how you think, what you're working on, or what's working?
Yeah, they can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm on there with Kelli Anderson. You can search for me by Des Moines Orthopaedic Surgeons, Chief Operating Officer. So happy to talk with anyone who has any questions. And Joe, thank you. I really enjoyed my first podcast. Hopefully there'll be more.
Awesome. Fantastic. See y'all.
Thank you.
Hey, it's Joe. Thanks for listening. If you like what you hear, share with a peer. And if you're looking to scale referral operations to drive growth and efficiency, visit hatchcare.com.